Okay, well, maybe we'll go ahead and get started. Again, good morning, everyone. I'm Monica Smith, the co-creator of Revel 11, along with Joni Parsons, who I think just joined us. We started Revel 11 almost 6 years ago now, with the idea of pulling together a community of women that wanted to dive deeper into conversations and topics that we care about. And since then, our community has grown to over 6,000. And today we are honored to have Jill Angelo joining us to dive deeper into the topic of physical surroundings. But what I quickly learned after I started reading her book, which is right here, can you see that? Is that it's necessary to dive deeper into our emotional and spiritual selves to truly create a space that is a personal sanctuary. Jill, welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Let's start with, I put that quote at the top, which I absolutely loved. Sacred space is where you can find yourself again and again, by Joseph Campbell. So beautiful. But then Jill put another one in her book, and she described it as an organized, calm, and relaxing reflection of your in individual style that helps create wellness by replenishing your energy and providing inner space or inner peace. And that is just so beautiful and so well said. So Jill, thanks again for joining us. And before we delve into the strategies of creating space, I think it's important to delve a little bit into your background and how you started exploring this topic. I know that you had a great tragedy during your 30s, and as part of your healing, you found Anatomy of the Spirit by Caroline Myss. I think that's how you say it. Can you talk briefly about the way she combines those three spiritual traditions and how that helped you?
Okay, well, Caroline, for those who are familiar with Caroline's work, she's an absolute powerhouse. And when I went through my tragedy, side note for people, I was engaged to a man and everything was blissful the day that we got engaged. And then the next day, he was completely a different person. He said that he felt that the other shoe was going to drop. And that's a very important piece there for a moment. And I reassured him as best I could. We went to work and then I got a call. He was on his way home. He told me that we said we loved each other, and legit 8 minutes later, from the moment that he hung up, he died in a 5-car accident. I, of course, was out of my mind for a number of reasons that we all know who have sustained anything tragic in our lives. And I went to my local church. I was raised Catholic. So I went to the church and I sought a priest and I said, why did this happen? Why me? Why? We all do that. So why did this happen to me? And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, you have to remember that evil occurs. And that wasn't the answer that I was looking for. So now I got to go find this answer myself. So I decide that I'm going to do some research because now I've got nothing but time because my whole world is upside down. I am determined to get to the bottom of something. So I'm in the bookstore and I go to a Mind, Body, Spirit section, and Caroline's book falls on the floor right in front of me. And I think many of us have had those experiences of universe saying, you need this. And so I picked it up, not knowing anything. What I took from it is the energy of how we are built, made, how energy works for us in our fields, how you can have somebody come up from behind you. And we know that feeling when the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and how our energy fields were actually, if you outstend your arms, we're a full bubble that goes all the way around us to the floor. So when that energy is penetrated by good, we feel great. By uncertainty, we get signs and symbols. And that energy medicine alongside of the chakra system that I didn't know existed until I picked up that book and I learned what energy medicine was all about. And then I took to it like a sponge. And I started studying in her classes with archetypes and developed and learned more about myself and my personality traits. And that was what helped catapult healing on a much deeper level than I even knew I needed, if that makes sense.
It
I
totally
don't,
does.
right? When you start delving further and deeper into who you are, how did I get here? People talk about universe, God, religion. That's fine. Now, even though I was raised Catholic, I still would consider myself more spiritual, but not religious. And that's because I traveled. And when I've traveled, I've gone into said religious places to have that experience. What is this like? Will I be welcomed? How do I feel? Do I relate? And when all that is still coming back around to more energy, I thought this book was extraordinary, especially for people who are not sure. It's a great place to start by looking at sacraments and looking at the religions and tree of life and chakra systems and how it pertains to you.
And wasn't it a combination of many different spiritual beliefs and religious beliefs that were all kind of analyzing each one and how they fit together that was really inspirational to you?
Yes. When I was in Italy and I walked into St. Peter's, and you're just overwhelmed, or you're at the Vatican and you're watching the Pope, who's this big because you're that far away, and you're listening to Mass in Italian or in Latin, and it's overwhelming, and you feel it in your heart, in your soul, to the bottoms of your feet. And then you walk into an ashram in India, and it's a whole different, the sojos are there and they're crossing themselves with sandalwood and burned ash, and you smell vibhuti, and you have that experience. Or you walk into a Buddhist temple and it's so stark, and Buddha is almost as long as the temple is wide, laying there. And to be in a synagogue and to have that experience. And the best part of all is that all I had to do was say this was my first time here. No one cared what religion I was. They just welcomed me to be. And that was an even greater blessing, because I was able to submerge myself for those moments of those ceremonies and have that experience.
That gave me chills when you were first describing it, and it's so true. And I love the way that you tied in those energy centers with your senses.
Mm-hmm.
And in your book, the layout of walking through each sense was so meaningful to me, because I also believe that your space is such a reflection of how you feel, but to give it some guidelines, it seemed much more tangible for me to understand the concept if it was broken down by sight and smell and sound and touch. And so I would love, if you're comfortable going through each of the senses, and if you could help provide some, tips or practices that you use to get in touch with those senses, but then how that also translates into your space. Sure. Or designing your space.
Sure. I think it's very important first to start that before Facebook came along, we all decorated for the purpose of who we were. And then all these extraordinary groups started, and I'm in a farmhouse group. And because the house that we had, we sold, and we moved down here to the border, as I said, and we bought a very modest cottage style house. And my goal was to cross what some designs would say is eclectic with what really spoke to me. So when you walk around the house, in fact, all of you over my shoulder can see those shutters that are hanging. Those shutters are from Rajasthan, India. They were 135 years old when I got them when I was in India in 2005. So that'll give you an idea of, I don't do math well, but y'all can do the math. They're a lot older now. The farmhouse groups that I'm in are extraordinary. And what's happening now is things are becoming, in my personal opinion, competitive, where we feel an obligation, there's a push, there's a drive. We're all either following the same color pattern, the same color palette. People won't make decisions without getting other people to say, what color paint did you use? And I think we're losing sight of where we live, and we're creating to not only impress ourselves, but we're posting that stuff up in these groups because we want people to see what we've done, and that's phenomenal. Yet we're gutted when a stranger we don't even know doesn't like the paint color. And I'll be first person to admit, I did that myself. I have a buffet that's barnwood, and I put it up. It's Bohemian Farmhouse because I'm in the Bohemian Farmhouse group too. And I put it up, and these women come right at me. That's too close. That's too far. That should be on an angle. And I'm thinking, you got that much time to critique my house? And yes, I put myself out there. However, what happened to, that's really nice, or just if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything. So now what people are doing is they're like, no negative comments. And I'm thinking, this isn't what this was about. We would come to people's homes, and unless we had legit photos of some sort, we didn't even know how we lived, right? It was a surprise when you walked in, and there'd be differences when we came. So when we did set up the book, I felt that it was important to look at our senses, and sight being first, because we take everything in so quickly and we scan, right? And our eyes are just going a mile a minute, taking it all in, what we like, what we don't like, because we've been trained to do that. And the unfortunate thing is that we're also addicted to our phones. So we now miss more than ever. And the only way we can relate to it is on our phone. And if here's a case in point, relevant and not necessarily pertaining to sacred space. How many people have gone to concerts and watched people on their phones in the concert videotaping it, and they're watching it through their phone? You are in a live event and you're watching it through your phone. And so I see a lot of people do this with their dogs. They walk their dogs and they're on their phone. The dog is having their experience, which is wonderful, yet you're missing out on your dog having the experience, and you're missing out on the world around you. You're missing out on the flowers that your neighbors are growing. You're missing out on the pothole that you could fall in, which many people have done. Your dog wants to be with you and bond with you. So what I'm encouraging people to do is try to go throughout your day without your phone. I read an article that said something like we touch our phones 2,500 times a day. And I thought that that was obscenely high. And yet, if you watch a teenager, it's absolutely true. I mean, if they even put it down. So for sight, when you're out walking or even driving, pay attention to what's around you. If you take the same route every day, pay attention. What have you missed? If you take a different route, we'll drive past things and we'll say, oh my God, I didn't even realize that grocery store had been closed. Because we're so focused and driven on getting from point A to point B, because we're so busy, that our surroundings we're not even as much aware of. And I hope that makes sense. And I think that if we were all able to get really real with ourselves, we all know we're doing it too.
I totally agree that there's such an importance of really trying to be present and aware of your surroundings. And I'd love for you to talk about how just raising this level of awareness of sight around yourself helps you figure out what your personal style is. And it was when you were talking earlier about, people being judgmental or critiquing. I absolutely adore the concept of expressing your personal style through either fashion or design, your physical space. And I think it's such a great opportunity to express your own personality through those outlets. And so going back to sight, I have to admit that I am kind of a sucker for looking at Instagram or whatever the social media site is, to look at design sites to see what I like and what I don't like. And I'm curious if you do the same thing, like, even if it's just to start to identify what your style is, like, oh, I really like that. I don't like that color. I do like that layout, whatever it is. Do you do that as well?
I did in the beginning, and I stopped, because if I came into any one of your homes, I'm going to find, and this is flat out across the board, we are all going to find what we love, what we would like to do, what was unusual, what was unique, what we might duplicate in our own way. And I think all that is wonderful, as long as it still pertains to you. And I'm not taking you, Monica, or anyone who's listening, and I'm legit taking what you did, because it's not going to be the same if you're viewing your space as the sacred space that it is. Instagram is extraordinary. That doesn't seem to be as much hate and whatnot on Instagram as there appears to be on Facebook, but it all is what it is. We all have the option to engage or not engage. What I would do is, when I walk in your home, I want to walk up to things and have you tell me the story, right? Why do you have what you have? And even more so, why do you have what you don't want? So here's a case in point. People who want to work out or feel an obligation to work out, or know they should work out for weight issues or whatnot. Many people will have some piece of equipment in their home. Oftentimes it's in their bedroom. And I've walked into countless homes that treadmill or stationary bike are loaded with towels, clothing. It becomes a new closet. We throw things on it. We're hiding it, right? We don't want to do it. And if that's the case, then why do you have it there? And some will say, well, it's the only place I can fit it. Well, then get it out. If you're not going to use it, why would you put yourself in a position when the most sacred space you have is your home and you don't want to be there? And how do you know you don't want to be there? Because you'll find distractions to get out of it, right? I don't want to clean. I don't want to have to deal with that, or they'll shove things in their closet. How many people on this call have clothing in your closets or your drawers that you wore years and years and years ago, and you're using it to monitor either weight loss or a special occasion or something, and you're not going to do it? You've had children. You've given the greatest gift to the world you could. You have birthed one child, more than one child, had a rainbow baby. Unfortunately, God bless, lost a baby. Your world changed and your physical body changed, and it's more beautiful before, it's more beautiful after than it ever was in the beauty before, because you were able to take yourself through a great gift of birth. And even those that choose not to, with age, we grow, and we grow beautiful bodies. So why would you want to put yourself back in a size 2 pair of jeans that you wore 30 years ago? You ain't going to fit in it. And that's okay. Bless it and let it go, and embrace who you are right now, because you are so beautiful. Every person on this call knows what I'm talking about. I know you do, because I did it too. I had a closet full before he died. I had a closet full. I went to London. And if you've been to London, then you most likely have been to Harrods. And I had a corporate job. It was a family business, but it felt and was run like a corporate structure. And I loved that. And that left brain of me, I loved it. So I had the pencil skirts and the French cuff shirts and the sleeves fold. You can see how animated I am about it right now. And guess what? I never wore them. Never wore them. Hung for years. And when I gave them away, I felt such a relief, because I wasn't that person. I didn't have to have those clothes to define me to be in the position I was in. They didn't
It's an
define me that way.
interesting twist, because we've had a couple of wonderful speakers on, including the author of a book called Minimalista. And it is the same message in essence, that simplifying, getting rid of the stuff that you don't use, is also soothing to your mind and your presence.
Absolutely.
And so I like that you're approaching it from a really different perspective that is more nurturing to your soul, but it kind of comes to the same place, that simplicity is really something that is beautiful.
It absolutely is. And all right, so we can level this into sight, because I can walk in people's homes and they'll tell me, don't go in there, I don't like that room. It's the scary scary basement, scary bathroom, scary bedroom, whatever. And then when you get in there, it's full of stuff that has either been handed down, life has changed, they're divorced, or anything could have happened. Or my favorite, it's been handed down for generation to generation. Moms make us daughters take it. Well, you got to take your grandmother's candlesticks, but I don't like those candlesticks, Mom. No, you got to take them. I told your grandmother that I'd keep handing them down. I'm like, but I don't want them, Mom. And she's like, no, you got to take them. I'm like, no, Mom, either you take them back because you love them, or I'm going to find somebody who's going to love them as much as you. I do not love them this way. I don't want to feel this obligation. I'm going to bless them and be grateful for them and move them along. So
being true to yourself.
Absolutely. And I should say, if you like them, so where was my compromise? My compromise was I found a beautiful box to keep them in. And on special occasions, when my mother comes, that's when I take out the candles. So everybody's happy. And then I put them away. And
I hope she's not on the call.
She probably isn't. But anyway, she's okay with that now too. So again, we're back to, if you're not happy in the environment that you're in, and when you walk in, you feel more stressful. I have found meeting people that they put in far more time at their office because they feel more comfortable in the office than they do in their own home.
Yeah.
Now,
COVID let's talk about that.
Okay.
Can we talk, since we still have a lot of senses to get through, I do want to touch on color related to sight, as well as focal points, and how this can be applied to both office and your home. Okay.
So we have this belief, many, that desks also are supposed to look a certain way. And there's the rule of thumbs where offices will say you cannot have photos of your family and blah, 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 blah. And then there's those that'll embrace it and say, sure. And what I've noticed in a lot of offices is people have stacks and stacks of things on their desk. And for those that do, what I would ask you is just to consider, are you doing that to build a wall around so that people won't come by you? Because when there's a lot of clutter, as we were discussing, we'll take a step back from it. We won't go near it. And if that's your situation, how well do you get along with your coworkers? Are they more distant from you? Do you want that distance? Are you even aware of the fact that you might be creating that? To your point of color, colors have all different meanings, and we could go over those. But the reason why I'm hesitant to do that is I don't want to influence you to like said color because it means X. I was on a call years ago and somebody said, well, I'm in my basement and we're talking feng shui and I want more prosperity. And the truth of the matter is that the way her basement was set up, if I had told her, well, putting your desk next to the furnace is never going to bring you prosperity, what did I do? I took all that hope and everything away from her. And I'm not hardcore feng shui. I think it's a wonderful concept and have used it numerous times. We have to find other ways around that. And the feng shui experts will state so too. And there's other ways that you could go around it. The bottom line was this woman felt best with the way her desk was set in that office in her basement. And I did not want to take that away from her. She felt successful. She felt powerful. She felt that she was doing a great job. And for that, leave that be where it is. Bring what makes you just as happy at home to work. If you feel the need to separate. If you're cluttered, remove the clutter, but ask yourself, do I have this clutter because I don't want people coming in my space? I'm one of those people, if you sit at my desk, I get uncomfortable. This is my little area. This is where I'm productive. This is where I work. And when I was in other jobs where I had a desk and it was more communal and people would just kind of zip over and sit in, I kind of took offense to that. It's like, but I don't want you sitting here. This is a calm, wonderful working space. And other people didn't necessarily have that energy. Sometimes we have to be very mindful of our boundaries and our awareness. Color is uberly important, especially if you don't have windows. My personal experiences are surround yourself with the colors that make you feel productive and reflect who you are. Black, we all know what the little black dress is about, right? And it doesn't matter what kind of dress it is. If it's black, most women feel they're most powerful in it. And then there's equal women who feel just as powerful in the most floral dresses ever. And that's what you should be in. And so if there's a trinket or something that brings you joy and you put it on your desk, then bring it there. It's important that it's a reflection of who you are, not what any box store suggests is because it's the hottest trend. That's what I think is. Go ahead.
You mentioned in the book about the importance of the tool of journaling.
Yes.
And I liked the idea of, I mean, I've had a really hard time starting a regular journaling practice my whole life, but I do keep a notebook where I'll jot down things that are meaningful to me or like that I really like. And sometimes I'll take photos and try to tie the two together. But I think that maybe you could talk a little bit about the importance of journaling and capturing these things. Like if you notice one day that the color green really made you feel calm.
Yeah.
Write that down in your journal. And so as you're coming up with new designs for your space, that you can refer back to those notes.
Sure. It's important that you are aware of what colors work. And if not, then I encourage you to go in your closet, organize your closet by color, by what's hanging. And if you're not sure, you'll see it. If I open up my closet for you, everything is neutral and it doesn't have any patterns. I don't wear patterns. They make me uncomfortable. I feel that I have an intense level of energy already, and that would speed up my energy and vibrate me higher where people would not want to be around me. So I have very calm, neutral colors. I did want to sidebar for a moment. In the book, we also talk about practical altars, and your desk, your countertop, like behind you, Monica, you have that beautiful floral arrangement, and it might be a candle that I see there. Look at the power and the simplicity that speaks by itself. Look at the beauty of the red and the pop of the green and what that does. That speaks, and I know we all saw it, and you chose this for your background also. So we do that whether consciously or subconsciously, to write down what speaks, or now we snap photos of it, and that's great. Then keep that on an online album on your phone and refer to it. And to your point again about what we do with Instagram, yes, we do save those things that speak and what doesn't. Sometimes we need that. Many times we're well aware, we just don't even know we're as aware.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. So can you see the design of my t-shirt?
Yes.
They're butterflies.
Yes.
I am super low energy, and this is my biggest struggle in life, is bringing more energy into my life. And I haven't consciously realized that, like, why I put on this shirt and why I have red flowers and a red candle, I think is to provide that energy. And so I think that is such an interesting perspective. Okay, let's move on to a different sense.
Sure. You want to talk about smell?
Sure.
Let's talk about smell. If you walk into any big box store, the big box stores are full of smells, and they're great, except they're fake and they're not real. So my number one most important emphasis in this is, when you can, bring as much of pure nature in. Nothing smells as good as a fresh lemon. Nothing. No fabricated lemon smells as good. Use as much natural product as possible, because we don't need all those contaminants in our bodies, on our skin, in the air that we're breathing into our lungs, on the floors that we clean, that our children and our pets walk in. Smell is uberly important. And if you're not sure how much, then I'd ask you to blindfold yourself. The intensity of what you will smell when I take away one of your senses, if not two. So when I teach, I will blindfold you and put earphones in you, soft ear plugs in you. And then I'll hand you things to make you touch them, because that will increase what you feel. It will also increase how well you smell. The intensity of those fragrances, you will either like or you will not. Essential oils, many of us use them. Please, if you do, use therapeutic grade. Young Living is a company that's therapeutic grade. Many people will say they're very expensive. They're expensive for a reason. You're inhaling pure, fresh, essential oil. You're not, a bottle of lavender that's $35 is so much better for you than a bottle of lavender that's $5. It's full of the stems. It's in alcohol. That's where you get the pop when you open it up and you think you're getting this great smell. You're not. We owe it to ourselves to make sure that we have the best, most affordable, natural smell that we can have. We know what fresh brewed coffee is like. We know what chocolate chip baked cookies smell like, what pure rain smells like. Those are the things that you want to bring into your home.
Yep. We just had a comment. When I started using more natural cleaners, it was amazing how chemically the detergent aisle smelled. And that's so true. I think that there's so many toxins and things that we can be using on a day-to-day basis that would really improve our lives if we didn't. So just being aware of that. And so back to your message of the journaling or whatever, it's really just an awareness of your everyday life, and smell is definitely part of that.
Absolutely. And people, when journaling started, which, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful tool, and I do it too. And I can go 3 days where I don't do it at all. And then when I open up the journal, I get all upset with myself because I just missed 3 days. And then I try to catch it back up and all this other stuff. Just keep moving. Life is happening. You're still aware. Odds are there's something on your phone that spoke to you. I know I put up memes that I see all day long, and I call them goodness because they speak to me. That is a form that I took in that speaks to my soul. Do I think that handwritten is better? I do. There's something in the way that we script and we write, where we sit down and we take the time, and it's like a ceremony to write. But it doesn't matter if it's 1 sentence or 15, you did it. These are small victories. So it's one step at a time. So to your point, if you wrote that green made you feel powerful that day, that's a great moment. You'll remember that. And when you go back to refer to it, you'll remember that again as well. Touch is another one that I think is super important. Again, if I were to blindfold you, which I do in class, I have, I think, 10 or 12 different materials, and I ask you to touch them and feel them. And you should see what a lot of people do with lace. There's this obligation when we see lace, because we tend to think of our our grandparents or our great-grandparents, because lace was very often used back in older times, and it was beautiful. However, now we have polar fleece, which feels better for other people. When you can't see it, you don't run to it. And it's interesting. So if you have that opportunity, honestly, take your sight away. Obviously, don't injure yourself, but if you can put yourself in a position to see, you'll see it. But then if you were to mix things up and start to touch them, it's much different on how you relate. And I noticed that when we're picking fabrics for furniture, for our beds, try sleeping on 800 count sheets. Yes, they're more expensive. Yes, you're worth that. Those are things you're spending 8 to 12 hours a night sleeping on those sheets. I would spend far more money on my bed linens than most other things. I don't sit on, I mean, I might lay on my sofa, but when I'm sitting to eat a meal at my kitchen table, there's a difference as to how much time I'm spending where or where. So you can reallocate that budget in different directions so that the pieces of self-care that are most important, like the cotton towels that you're drying your body with every single day, are just as, if not more important than the chair that you're sitting to eat dinner in.
That's so interesting because, well, I may like bold colors for clothing and stuff like that. For my energy level, my physical space is very neutral. I really am drawn to a neutral palette for my furniture and stuff like that, and bedding and towels. But I'm drawn to texture to provide a level of interest and like depth in your sight. But I haven't really thought about how that translates to wanting to touch it and how it feels when you touch it. Because sometimes, you know, like a heavy weave is not comfortable to sit in or to touch. So I think it's a balance that I'll need to find.
Well, a lot of people have stainless steel for the reason that if you do touch it, it doesn't leave imprint or it's harder to scratch. And you know, that's a real important need for large families. And it makes sense. If it doesn't speak, then make the kids help you wipe down the refrigerator, right? I mean, don't have it for just that reason, or because it's the hottest trend in design, or it's the hottest trend in the farmhouse groups like I'm in. Everything in farmhouse is black and white. And the pops of color are the flowers that you have. And it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And then you'll see someone post who has introduced a lot more color and people go gaga for it. And it's like, that works too. You know, there is no wrong. It's what's best for you. And when it comes to art, you all have extraordinary photos on your phones. Sunrises, sunsets that you witnessed yourself on vacation. Why would you not frame that in this day and age and use that over a store-bought box store piece of art? You could put it on canvas or however you want to do it, make it a poster. Decorate with things that are speaking to your soul, not what the box stores say is the hottest trend, or find a creative way with your own pieces to work around it. If budget's an issue, go to your Goodwills, your thrift stores. There's tremendous buys in there. When you bring them home, make sure that you say a cleansing prayer over it, because energy travels. And we need to be aware of that. Back to being at our desks. When somebody comes up and all that, you want to make sure that when you are giving your things away and you don't need them anymore, thank them. Thank them for what they did. The wedding gown, if you're divorced, that was still a happy moment in your life. And if you're going to give it to a Goodwill store for another bride to one day take and wear and get married in, bless her. And bless that marriage that was and now you're on to a new journey for yourself, but that energy is still there. And if you pack it up in haste and bitterness because you're so upset, then it's not time necessarily to give it away that way if you can't release it from that energy so that it's clean for another person to take it. I hope that makes sense in the way I explained it.
Absolutely. I think that is such an important perspective. And it also made me realize that I haven't asked people for questions. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat area and we can have Jill answer them, even if it's specific design questions. But you know, Jill, you mentioned that in the book too, about you don't need a big budget necessarily to surround yourself with things that you love in your home.
Right.
And I actually find that there is a sense of joy when I find something, like whether it's at a thrift store or a garage sale or something like that, because it has a story. And even though you might not know that story, it's such a meaningful part of my surroundings. And I also think that, like, whether it's smudging or saying a prayer also, you know, can release that energy if there is any negative energy associated or negative stories. But I know that I'm getting ready to move into a new home. And the most meaningful part of that move is that my best friend's partner made our dining room table. Actually, Joni's partner, Jordan, made us our dining room table. And I am so excited that the focal point of the main room will be someone that I love and that I will always think of when I sit down to dinner. So I think personal stories are so important as you're creating space for yourself.
The focal point, which you did mention, and I did not speak about, and I'm sorry for that.
It's okay.
Focal points are in every room. It's usually the big wall that'll capture our eye. Most often than not, people hang their televisions on there. It'll be fireplace mantles when you walk into a home with a fireplace. Those are important pieces, but you don't have to clutter them. The concept of less is more, and the concept of the perfection is in the imperfection. And that's what Wabi Sabi is. It's perfect exactly as it is. And remember that there's other focal points. The cherry on top of the sundae, the ice cream sundae, is a focal point. The moon on a clear night is a focal point. And to your point of your table, that table is not only a focal point, that table is a practical altar. And because of how moved and touched you are to have this beautiful piece in your home, when you set that table, and please make sure that you set it with your very best china or plates, whatever they are, don't save them just for the good occasion. Every day is a good occasion to be using your china. When you do that, there's going to be something that's stirred in your soul when you're placing those plates. You're going to double check to make sure your fork placement is right and your knife placement is right, because that is a reflection of who you are. It's a testimony of relationship and friendship that brought that table to you. And that's what's making it sacred.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Can you describe a little bit about what your personal strategies are for bringing nature into your home?
Sure. If you were looking at feng shui will tell you that the dried flowers, even if they were fresh flowers and they dried, that is a bad energy or a negative energy because they're dead. Feng shui is about life and movement and keeping things moving. Sometimes we need to have fake or recreated because we want to have that design piece. I'll go back to the same thing that I said with smell. And that is, when you can have real nature, please do. We talked about not using fabricated smells. If you don't want to use essential oils, then you could get fresh rosemary, fresh eucalyptus. You could tie them up in your shower when you take a shower, and you'll have that natural smell there. Grow an herb garden in your window during the winter. For those of us who live with snow, grow an herb garden and use fresh herbs versus dried herbs. You could grow those all year round. They don't take up much space, but you still have the component of that nature part. When you can live with open aired windows with the fresh air coming in that you can tolerate, not because you're in a construction zone, but if you have to wait until the evening to do it, let the fresh air in. The fresh air cleans and sweeps stagnant energy the same way that smudging does, and it opens up for new. Open up the windows and let sunlight in instead of keeping lamps on all the time. The same thing for the darkness. You know, my husband, he jokes with me because I like to live in the dark. I do. I don't care so much. I have a lamp on. You can see the lamp that's by me. It's raining here today, so it is darker. I don't keep lights on unless I have to. Our bedroom is designed in such a way that we don't have curtains hanging. We have valances that go across the center so that the moonlight and the starlight can come through. Nothing's better than that. So if you can welcome those in, please do.
How do you feel about organic shapes? And is there something to that, because organic shapes happen in nature, that we should try to incorporate it into our physical space?
If you feel comfortable and it speaks to you, absolutely. Absolutely. Back in the 80s, I had a client whose website and all that was designed in more of that 80s industrial graph paper squared boxes, and everything had hard, sharp angles and such. And you know what? If that speaks to you, so be it. It's what works for you. When people come over, they're only spending a tiny amount of time, right? So if it's not something that speaks to them, it doesn't matter. This is where you live. You know, and again, I would want to be able to walk through your home and tell me the story of why. Why do you have what you have? What is the story behind it? And even when we grab things in the secondhand stores, we formulate a story of our own, and then we wonder what would the story be if we were to ask the person who had it. Energetically, though, we can feel something, even if we're consciously aware of it or not. And that's one of the biggest takeaways from today, is for everybody to be as consciously aware of what's around you and how does it speak to you. More often than not, we know what doesn't, but we're not as aware of what does. And just because it's trending does not mean that it speaks to you. Maybe you can find something even cooler, for lack of a better word, at a secondhand store. Maybe if you're not sure to redesign, if you're itching to redesign and you are on a real budget, take everything out of the room and then switch things from other bedrooms or other rooms. Use the throw pillows from your bedroom to put in your living room and vice versa. You can change up a lot with what you already have if you're willing to take the time.
And is part of that exercise just to reflect on how it makes you feel, like
Sure.
the changes?
Sure. Or even better, if you have no significant attachment to it, then it may be time for it to go. And that doesn't mean you have to replace it. Back to less is more. I had an issue come up a couple weeks ago where I walked into an incredibly tranquil setting. I absolutely loved it. And I came home and I was a whirling dervish. I packed up everything that seemed like I just didn't have the attachment to it anymore. But I was so busy in everyday life that I didn't really realize it until I was there. And then I came home and I thought, you know, I'm feeling cluttered. And if you want to move space for something new to come in, clean out your refrigerator. We all have junk drawers. Clean out your junk drawer and watch what new comes. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
Kind of the idea of making space, not only physical space, but in your energetic space.
Yes, absolutely.
I did have a question come in about clarifying the book by Caroline Myss. Is that how you say your name?
I say Mace, but yes.
Mace. Okay. So the name of the book is An Anatomy of the Spirit. But so just full circle, since we are running out of time, I'd love for you to just like reflect back now that we've had this conversation about tying that together with her book and the energy centers, can you kind of like summarize how that fits into it?
Well, I think that, I mean, I'll speak from my own personal perspective of how Caroline's work spoke to me. I was a baby when it came to energy awareness or what energy fields were. I didn't know what a chakra was. I had no, spiritual life of mind, body, spirit. I didn't know what any of that was. I learned by picking up that book and reading that book what a chakra system was, that we have 7 chakras that are energy centers that go from our perineum, our root chakra, to our crown chakra at the top of our head. And how all that works to make up for who we are in our energy fields. She relates it to sacraments and the tree of life. And for that, I will not speak it as well as she does. So I'll just encourage all of you who are intrigued by it. And if you're not familiar with it, to please make sure that you get the book and read it. It's a fascinating read. The chakra systems are very important because if you're not exposed to them, then you're going to want to be, and you'll want to learn more. And for those of us that have studied them, or of any of us who do energy work, myself included, for instance, Reiki, you're going to be drawn to those chakras to understand how those energy fields are working and what you feel. Our homes are really just an extension of our energy fields. They really are. So when we talk about you talking about, Monica, that you're wearing your butterfly t-shirt because you have such a calm energy, sometimes it does help if we speed up that energy a little bit. You chose the color red, which is a fire energy, and it will stir things up and move things along. And in my situation, I'm in blue today because I need to calm myself because I have more intense energy. And so I think that on one level, we're all pretty aware of it. We just don't know how much. And a book like that, Anatomy of the Spirit, could jumpstart you if you want to know more. If you're really into chakras, then Endonata Judith wrote a book about chakras. I can run and get it off my shelf for you to see. It's a book that's this thick, and any of us who have done any level of energy work and training to physically work with other people know exactly what book I'm referring to, because that lady knows her chakra system. So
I love the chakra system.
You could look at, in a brief, I will say that, for instance, our kitchens are usually our heartbeat. So I would coordinate that to it being the heartbeat of a home. When we have parties, that's where the majority of the people congregate. I think we could possibly look at some other rooms being different chakras, but I also think that some of that is based on how we see and how we're using said room. So I don't usually tie them in. I will look at a kitchen being a heartbeat of a room. We use those terminologies for reasons.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to share with the audience how you have redirected some of your interest in sacred space to a new audience. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
How I've redirected.
I'm talking about your animals.
Okay. So after he passed away, and I went through all of what I had to do and recreate the house because I couldn't sell it. So now I was stuck and I had to stay there. And that's how I really created this, because this is something that we oftentimes do with our partner, right? You go shopping and you pick stuff together and you've got 2 hours. It's like, oh yeah, I like those dishes, let's get them. And then you don't really know why you like them so much, you just do, or it's the hottest thing and whatnot we've talked about. So the house that I had when I met my husband had parakeet green and like a melon orange kitchen. And my office was chocolate and rain, so brown and blue. My living room was chocolate covered cherry. I had these extraordinary bold colors, because I suffered a death myself, right? So I needed to come back to life. And I felt that I needed the color in the way that you referenced wanting to wear your butterfly t-shirt. And then we decided to start this 501c3 because I had worked in an animal shelter for a while, and we fostered the most medically compromised animals. So we packed up everything. We sold everything that we could that we didn't want for ourselves. And we moved down here into the Illinois-Indiana border. And I started with my husband, Scotty, a 501c3, and it's called the Moondog Farm. And we help special needs dogs. And we also got into helping guinea pigs and rabbits. So we started in 2018, we started helping guinea pigs and rabbits. And I am honored to share that we've rescued over 1,000 of guinea pigs and rabbits since then. And we have sanctuary 10 special needs dogs, and we've fostered, because we will foster medically compromised dogs as well. We have fostered, I think we're at 50 or 55. So my new focus is going to be sacred space for pets. So I'm actually starting in 2 weeks a course to become an animal chaplain, because I feel that there's such a need for that. And our pets, exist in our areas. So think about the environment. Your pet has to live in it. So if your pet's pretty hyper, is your house hyper, right? Some of that is breed related, and I get that. But there are ways to help work with those pets in that way too. But our pets are an extension. They feed off of our energy. And we all know if we're having a bad day, that dog is right next to us, licking our face, trying to cheer us up.
Well, Jill, I just think that's so amazing that you have shifted your focus to animals, and they really are an extension of ourselves. And before the call started, Jill shared that she has 11 dogs around her right now, and they've been so well behaved because we haven't heard them at all. But everyone, we've run out of time. Again, this is Jill's book. Jill, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm honored to be with all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Did you all see Caroline's? This is Caroline's for those who want to explore Caroline's book.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Sure.